I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about peace of mind. Having peace of mind in turbulent times seems to be a desire that most of us have, but to be at peace in the midst of these turbulent times is a great challenge that we face. And so we'd like to talk to you about some concepts and ideas for gaining true peace of mind. I guess everybody really seeks after that, don't they, Iris?
Yes, I think we all aspire for that, but very often we don't achieve it. But it's just a matter of faith, don't you think so?
I think it is. Also, I think the issue of understanding that peace, like other positive attributes and manifestations of our life, begin with us.
Yeah.
And so often we want to have peace, or we want to be in a peaceful place. And we see all of these things happening in the world. And of course, in today's environment, we see a lot of turbulence and even war. And to claim that peace, we have to go within ourselves, don't we? We find peace within before we find it without.
Exactly. And if we don't find peace within, then we're certainly not going to find it without. But again, if we live our faith, and everyone has some faith and faith in something, if we do that, then we accept that yes, nothing stays the same. Yes, we're going to face change, and the terrible things that happen, like wars and rumors of wars, are hard to accept. But still, we can maintain our own energy level around us as that of peacefulness.
Mhm. It's important that we understand that we do use our energy, don't we?
Yes.
And that as we dissipate our energies, especially when we dissipate our energies on negative thoughts and emotions and turmoil within ourselves, we burn up a lot of our vital energies, don't we?
Yes, we do. I remember asking an attorney once what most people said when they were getting a divorce. He said, "Oh, he said and she said, he said and she said." And so we spend a lot of time doing that, repeating what so and so said, whether it's in relation to whatever it's in relation to. And it could be in any aspect of life. If we spend a lot of our energy saying what so and so said, and isn't that awful sort of modality of thinking, then we're burning our energy to no avail.
Mhm. Some of that comes from thinking of the past a lot, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it is.
And of course, as I talk to people, and you talk to many as well, we find so often that people do draw upon the negative turmoils or pains or difficulties of the past, and they relive them, and they really keep them alive in their hearts and minds.
Yes, they do. And we can't tell them don't do that because they don't know how to do any better. All we can do is set an example. And if people ask us, give them some suggestions. I'm just now thinking of a lady with whom I corresponded this past weekend, or corresponded with a mutual friend about her. And that lady was so abused as a child. She was abused in every way and made to be fearful all her life. And she ran away from home when she was 4, and she told the authorities that her family had abused her, and her family were part of a cult that was Satanists. And a lot of people think there is no such things. Well, we know there is. And so they took her back to her home, and her family said, "Oh, she just runs away." And she never was able to escape that family until she was in her teens because they just kept her there. But it's such a terrible thing. And then her mother died this past weekend. And so my friend wrote and said, "What do you think," emailed, "what do you think would do for that lady? Should she see her mother or should she not?" Because she's so torn as to whether or not. And I felt that the energy on the inner planes would help her to gain greater energy. And so I said no one could tell her what to do, and no one can. We can't. We never can we?
No.
But we can explain to her that it might be a good idea to face this. So she went to see her mother, and her mother died soon after she saw her in the hospital. And so I think she came through that victorious. But all this lady's life, she has faced fear, greatest fear. Now, most of us never know the meaning of that kind of fear.
Mhm. That's very true. And in her search, she was really looking for peace of mind, wasn't
Yes.
she? And the way in which she could gain peace of mind.
And she found it by running away from her family, although they knew where she was, and not having anything to do with her family. And she went back to school and got her teaching credentials. And now she's teaching this year for the first year. And she's a very brilliant woman, but her life could have been totally ruined by this terrible situation of her childhood, but she didn't let it happen. She sought peace of mind in her own way, found it, and again, no one can tell her what to do or not do because she found her own peace of mind. And it's just by keeping on with her life in the way that she thought would be most productive.
And there is no magic bullet or there's no recipe, is there? And
Never.
in so many ways, in New Thought metaphysical philosophy, we talk a lot about the fact that people are responsible for their own lives, and through divine direction and connection with the divine within and without, we are guided and directed, but the responsibility is ours, and that doesn't take away from the reality or the power of God, because God is constant good, and we need to understand that. But so the presence and power of God or the divine never changes, but we change, and we have to take responsibility and initiative to draw into our life the kind of existence and the kind of experience that we would choose to have. Therefore, if we want to have a peaceful state of mind, then we have to seek out the ways in which we can gain it, and then we have to do the things necessary to bring it about. And it's really an issue of self-responsibility. And it isn't that anyone can tell us how. People can tell us what works for them. People can give us advice. We can pray and meditate. We can seek guidance and have a variety of means of reflection. But ultimately, we have to decide, and we have to do the things necessary to bring about our peace of mind.
Yes, and then by the same token, we have to allow other people around us to do that very same thing, regardless of if we think we have the answers. We couldn't have the answers for everyone. Each has to, as you said, take self-responsibility, and the family and friends around them need to allow them to make their choices. It's just like I wouldn't have presumed to tell that lady who had been so abused by her family, should she or should she not visit her mother. Personally, I was very glad she did because I thought it made a good healing for her.
Mm-hmm. And in that case, it helped her through
Yes.
that process.
She said that was the first night she had had a full night's sleep since she could ever remember. Since she could ever remember. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was a very interesting thing, that although she grieved, and she grieved for her mother, she mostly grieved for what she didn't have with her mother, but still, it's interesting that she could sleep and she found peace of mind, probably because she went to visit her.
Mm-hmm. Because she did something.
Yes.
And she was guided to
Right.
do that. Now, she sought counsel, but ultimately she had to decide what it
Yes.
was she needed to do. And of course, one of the things that we all need to do when we're seeking peace of mind is understand that, well, as we say so often, we live in our minds and not
Yes.
in the world. So what's going on in our mind creates the sense of peace or the lack thereof.
That's true. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And if we blame others, or if we say, woe is me, why does this have to happen to me? If we use any of that negativity, then we're not getting peace of mind. But if we accept that, yes, this has happened, and probably it's happened to a lot of other people, and we just have to accept that we're responsible for this space in our own life and take measures to do whatever it is we need to do.
Absolutely, and that's a good point. We're responsible for where we are,
Yes.
and we've brought ourselves to where we are now. In some cases, circumstances and situations do occur over which we don't have a lot of control, but we always have control over the way that we think about them,
Yes,
don't we?
indeed we do. And that is so important for everyone to remember, that they do have control of their lives. But as you mentioned earlier, we always have God there to sustain us. And you often have us say in church, God and we are one, or God and I are one. And that's one way to bring peace of mind, to know that we're never alone. We don't have this burden of life on our own shoulders altogether, because we always have the spiritual assistance if we but seek it. And not only do we have God, but we have other entities and our guardian angel. And those who are Christian have Jesus, and those who are not Christian have some other entity to whom they can gain energy, from whom they would gain energy. And so it's interesting, isn't it, that we are never alone.
Absolutely. And you brought in so beautifully, no matter what our faith tradition is. And one of the things we talk about so often on this program is we never talk about anyone changing their belief or their faith, But in every faith, there is the reality of the divine in one way or a shape or manifestation or one presence. And that connection that we make brings us peace. For those of us in the Christian tradition, of course, we know that Christ Jesus himself said that he brought peace not as the world brings it, but he brought peace in a unique way, and that was inner peace. And that's true of all spiritual leaders and teachers, is the teaching and claiming of the indwelling peace, so that we can be at peace in our hearts and our minds despite the unpeaceful circumstances and situations around us.
Yes, and as we go through our great holidays, we gain special energy and strength and peace of mind, which carries us over. And then when we're having troubled times in our own lives, we can remember the energy that we gained. And I think it's very important that we do that. It's like we build up a storehouse of energy, and then we can draw from that. We have our own storehouse.
Yeah. And those holidays that you mentioned, which take place all through the year, we have different times of reflection and remembrance. Each one of those comes and brings us an opportunity to reflect upon and to claim the peace that we choose to have. And then all through the year, of course, we can do it any day. But each of those special holidays and events give us an opportunity once a year to remind ourselves that peace is ours if we choose to claim it.
Yes, and very often we go back into a shell. Very often we resist other people around us. But a peace of mind is just accepting whatever is in our life, the people, the things, um, the duties, the obligations, and accepting them that, yes, this is what I need to do, and but not to freak out that it's too much, because nothing is too much. We can just do what we can.
That's an important issue, that no matter what comes into our life, we will be given the strength and the ability to deal with it.
That's right. And one day we might think we need to do X number of things, and the next day we might think, well, we just need to do half that much. So we don't need to beat ourselves over the head because we can't do what we think at that moment we need to do, because the next day we might see that, well, that wasn't even necessary.
And it all seems to happen within us, doesn't it, Iris?
Yes.
And more we're reminded of that fact that we live within, and that we believe so often that the situations and circumstances that take place in our world, in our families, in our workplace, in our communities, and in the globe itself are really determining how it is that we feel, but we really determine how we feel as we respond and react to those circumstances.
Yes, it's our own response to the situations around us that sets the pace then for our own peace of mind. Because if we feel totally defeated, we're not going to have peace of mind. And if we feel arrogant, we're not going to, because we're putting up a facade that that we can't surmount in our own heart. So we just have to keep a balance. And as we keep that balance and do the best we can from day to day, then and don't beat ourselves over the head any more than we would beat someone else that they're not accomplishing all they need to accomplish, because sometimes we just need to be. We don't have to always be busy doing.
That's very important. I mean, sometimes it's all right to just be where we are and to allow the circumstances and situations around us to be as well, and allow others to be. That's very difficult sometimes when we're dealing with, especially with the loved ones, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I remember my great-grandmother used to always have everyone be busy, and all the family would make remarks about the fact that she had to keep everyone busy. You couldn't go into her presence that she didn't give you a chore to do. Well, that's the American work ethic. And the American work ethic says that you have to stay busy all the time. If you don't, you're not worthwhile. So isn't it too bad?
It is. And we stay busy and we stay active. And sometimes because of our busyness, we miss the opportunities to have the sense of peace of mind that we should have. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you could continue these teachings and thoughts in your home.
We would like to give you the opportunity to explore and discover in your own home the new thought teachings that this program is sharing with you by sending you a free copy of one of these booklets. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807. Whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can reach it through confident living.
Just before the break, we were talking about the ways in which we keep ourselves from having peace of mind. And maybe in this last half, we should talk about some techniques. We talk a lot in this program about the techniques of meditation and prayer, don't we? And I think we certainly couldn't go through a segment on peace of mind without talking about meditation. But even before meditation, we could touch on the reality of a prayer time. And it's good, I think, for people to establish, as well as a meditation time, a time for prayer, isn't it?
Yes, and the first thing in the morning is the ideal time, the ideal way to begin the day. And a lot of people think we're being Pollyanna if we say, well, I begin my day with a prayer. But actually, we're being very selfish because we're getting an inflow of energy from God and God the whole, and then we're sending out our energy to the world. So we're feeling worthwhile in both instances. So I can't imagine starting a day without some kind of prayer.
Mhm. People start the day with prayer, or in New Thought, sometimes people use affirmations.
Yes.
But the real important point that you said, I think, shared with us, is really wonderful, is that beginning the day with prayer is an important time to set the tone for the day, for ourselves to have peace of mind, and for those around us to have peace of mind, and for the entire world to have peace of mind.
Yes, and so as we thank God in the first thing in the morning for the good night's sleep and for the exciting day ahead, we can also always remember to not plead with God for anyone else, but just to thank God that those people we love or we care for whom we're praying, are doing well. And that was brought home to me very clearly at one time that when we uh, plead with God in a negative way about someone, if they're going through an illness or if they're going through problems of any kind, well, actually, we're sending negative energy out. Isn't that exciting to know that we don't need to send negative energy out to people? All we need to send is positive and light-filled energy. And so we can forget the problems people have, but just see them as whole, healthy, strong, fulfilled, work with their work going well. And when we do that, it starts our day off to a wonderful beginning.
Mhm. And it's really important for us, again, to go back to this point of, you made a good point in terms of our pleading with God. We so often will plead with God in our prayers to do this or do that on our behalf or on behalf of other people. And that sets up a very negative vibration within us and within the life around us, because one of the things we need to know and understand is that, as we said earlier, God is constant. And
Yes.
so we don't have to convince God to do good for us. And we don't have to convince God to give us opportunities or to meet our needs or to be in the midst of our circumstance or situation. That power and presence is already there. And what we need to do is to claim it for ourselves and for others. And we begin that, and we do it so beautifully through the aspect of thanksgiving, and even the aspect of thanksgiving in the face of the apparent lack or limit of the situation that we see. But so often we see and experience, and then we believe that if we plead with God,
Yes.
or worse yet, if we make a deal with God, that we'll do something and then God will do something. Well, that's a little bit like the problem that we get into with our personal relationships and intimacies and love, is that when we get into relationships and we start telling people, well, I'll love you if you do this, and vice versa, we're getting into an area that has very little to do with love at all. We're making deals.
Exactly.
And often that's what we do in our prayer life. And so in our prayer life in New Thought, we talk so often about affirmative prayer, and that is to affirm the reality. And the reality is that the good is already there, the peace is already there, the prosperity is already there, the healing's already there, the need is already met. And the need that we have is to be able to see the need met even before we can see it with our human eyes. And that's what robs us of peace of mind.
Yes. And there's a trite saying, see the good and claim it. But it might be trite, but it's true. And if we do look to the good, as you just said so very well, then we are living on a positive aspect of being. And then if we claim it for other people, we're praying in a positive way instead of the negative. And I think that as we go through life, we see so much turmoil and so much unpleasant things happening. But again, we can just know that that is part of life. Those changes are necessary, and we're all going to die sometime. We're all going to have different things happen in our lives that are not pleasant. But it's how we accept those things that makes all the difference in the world. And if it's someone else who's facing those challenges, then if we stay up and positive about it, then it lifts them. And our good energy then lifts them and gives them a new impetus. And we've all faced difficulties and challenges where the next day we wonder, how could I have been so upset about that yesterday? But we do get upset. But if we remember that fact, that whatever seems so awful won't seem so awful later on, then we can bear it more easily and keep the positive aspect, keep the peace of mind. And then people call us courageous, but what we're being is self-preservation.
Self-preservation, and we're claiming the reality of life that God wants for us. God provides every resource that we need, and it's up to us to claim those resources. And so often we have to claim them in mind before they become manifest in physical form in this world. And sometimes our faith really is tested, but the stronger our faith becomes in seeing beyond these appearances and claiming the good, the more powerful and dominant that peace of mind will be for us. Because no matter what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears and experience in our lives, we're able to transcend that with the knowledge and the awareness that we'll be guided and directed to do that which we need to do to bring us out of that circumstance. And that's true not only for us, but for everyone. And I think it's really important that we emphasize that none of these ideas or teachings or universal laws have anything to do with one group or one segment of society. It's true for everybody, because everyone is a perfect and whole child of God without exception, and none of us can do anything to change that.
Exactly. And if people could just remember that, there would be so much greater peace of mind in the world and greater happiness. Because I think most people are too self-deprecating. Most people look down on themselves. And then sometimes others, we know that other people are looking down on us, but it doesn't matter. If we're whole, as you just described, then nothing matters that much. Other people's opinions don't matter that much, because we just go on our way doing the best we can from day to day, and that's all we're asked to do.
Mm-hmm. And in our prayers, going back to that issue, often we can use prayers as a time of visualizing, can't we? And for
Yes.
some people, that exercise is very important for them in their prayer to be able to visualize the need already met, to, if it's a financial need, to visualize the fact and see the fact that that financial need is being met. If someone else that they know is having a health challenge, that they can see that person well and radiant. And so that visualizing becomes a part of the prayer process. Paul said we pray always, which means that our thoughts are prayers.
Yes.
And so as we think, then we're able to create the positive consciousness or awareness that we need.
Yes. There's a lady who's facing surgery, and I've been praying for her, and she's been praying that she'll be healed without having to need the surgery. And it remains to be seen, because her surgery is scheduled the end of this month. But it remains to be seen. But I know that that lady will, if she does have to have the surgery, she'll come through with very little problem, very victorious, because she's treating her body daily toward perfect health. And isn't it a wonderful thing to know that we're capable of doing that?
And it's very important for us to understand that just because we have a physical illness doesn't mean that we're sick.
Exactly.
I mean, a sickness of the body and sickness of the mind and the spirit and the being are two very different things. And so we know that even in the midst of physical sickness, people are able to claim their wholeness. And they
Yes.
can claim that wholeness throughout the experience that we call sickness, and even unto death, if that is the process through which they're moving. So it's important for us to understand that health and prosperity and happiness and joy and peace are natural states of our being and consciousness, despite what happens on the surface of life.
Yes, well, Mary Baker Eddy and Charles Fillmore would be prime examples of that, wouldn't they?
Absolutely, and the teaching of the non-reality of matter, which is a little heady for some
Yes.
people, but the fact is that we live in this physical world, and we understand that, and we live in these physical bodies, and we understand that, but we also understand that these physical bodies are changing. So they've obviously been given to us for a purpose, but the purpose is one through which we're moving. And so even though the body changes or the world changes, we know that the reality of our essence or our being, our soul, our spirit, our inner being is constant and always in the midst of health and prosperity and happiness and joy, even though the physical body may not be.
I was looking at through a window at the things that displayed in a Christian Science reading room. and thinking how courageous Mary Baker Eddy was to have had physical problems, but yet she functioned from her soul self so greatly that she inspired millions. And I also just now thought of Helen Keller. What an inspiration she's been to so many people. And yet she faced those challenges that everyone knows about, that she was blind and deaf. And yet she was a genius in her own right in helping people come to terms with difficulties.
And those are both absolutely beautiful examples of the overcoming of the turmoil of the world, or the problems and challenges of the world. And those are tremendously extreme. Most of us would never be able to do what Helen Keller was able to do, but in fact we all are able to.
Yes.
But would we do it if we were faced with that difficulty,
Yes.
with those challenges? And probably, unfortunately, many of us would not, because of a variety of things, including the fact that we believe what we see and we believe what we experience, when in fact there's more to life than what we experience. The experience is really based upon what happens inside us, and that peace of mind comes from peace of our mind in the midst of this life.
Yes. Well, there's always divine intervention, and a lot of people don't look to that as a potential, but let it slide, let it ride. And of course, Helen Keller was blessed to have had Annie Sullivan in her life, and to have had the parents who would supply someone who knew how to handle her situation, and then the right person was there. And so it's accepting what comes our way, even though she was still a child. She accepted that Annie Sullivan was going to help her, and did. And so then she ended up more brilliant than anyone around her.
What a wonderful way to end our discussion today, because we do need, if we're going to claim peace of mind, to rely upon others and to claim the peace of mind that we deserve and have as a divine right, and claim it for others as well. We hope you found this information useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
This program is a community outreach of Christ Church. Dr. Mike Costello speaks each Sunday morning at 11 a.m., and Dr. Iris Freelander speaks on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. at the church. On Sunday evenings at 6 p.m., there is a meditation and healing service. Come and join us. You will be warmly welcomed.